Today, in a statement issued only about 15 minutes ago, she quite clearly lists three controversial associations she has been a member of. One of them is one of those put to her last night. She says she had an honorary role with the Guangdong Overseas Exchange Association in 2011, and she no longer has an association with that organisation. But as you saw there last night, she was denying any knowledge of it. Today, she confirmed she was involved with that organisation, and I should say two others that weren't put to her last night, but which have been controversial. Let's bring in now Liberal backbencher, former Australian diplomat, Dave Sharma. Thanks for joining us, Dave. This is very messy for Gladys Lui.
Look, I've got some sympathy for Gladys, Chris. I mean, Gladys was born in Hong Kong, a British territory at the time. She moved to Australia in 1984. She's not a foreign policy expert. She doesn't profess to be. She's cleared things up, I think, with her statement today. But I think the attention on her is a bit unwarranted. And I also worry a little bit that just because someone is of a different ethnic origin, their nationalism or their patriotism is going to immediately be called into question. I think there's some undertones of that with Gladys Lui here.
All right, well, let's just clear up the foreign policy aspects here, because I do agree they have been overblown by her political opponents. Firstly, she refused to call Xi Jinping a dictator. I don't know any Australian minister who goes around calling Xi Jinping a dictator. Do you?
No, I don't think that's the terminology we'd use. I mean, we certainly we recognise China has quite a different political system to ours. It's authoritarian. It doesn't have elections of the sort that we'd recognise, but we have to deal with them as they are and as their form of government is. So I think going around attaching labels to the method by which they rule is not particularly helpful, and certainly it wouldn't be diplomatic practice or Australian government practice to do that.
Likewise, would you say that Beijing is breaking international law in the South China Sea?
Well, as a country, we don't take positions on competing territorial claims. This issue has been adjudicated, though, in international tribunals, and the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea ruled on this in 2016, a dispute between the Philippines and China, and that tribunal said then that China's so-called 9-dash line claims had no basis in international law. We certainly respect and would abide by that ruling. That ruling also said that features such as the Spratly Islands and other pieces of reclaimed land in the South China Sea do not give rise to territorial waters, and also that would be our view at international law.
Yeah, right. And what you just said then, as a trained and professional diplomat, is not inconsistent with what Gladys Lui said last night.
No, I don't believe so. And look, I mean, this is pretty arcane areas of international law, very important to Australian national interests. But unless you've worked on these issues for a number of years, or you know it inside out, or you're on the front bench or the foreign minister, I wouldn't expect most people to know about this. I happen to because of my background as a diplomat. But if someone quizzed me on a particular,
yeah, you make that point.
Sorry, of some other policy area.
I just want to move on because we are pressed for time. But the critical point here is that Gladys Lui denied any knowledge of being involved with either the Guangdong or Shandong Overseas Exchange Associations in the past. In a statement today, she now says that she did have an honorary role with the Guangdong Overseas Exchange Association and a couple of others we haven't mentioned. How insidious are these associations? Is there a chance that she was being played by the Chinese communist regime? And what penalty should she pay for misleading us over this point?
Well, I think I've only looked briefly at her statement, but I think that speaks for itself, and she's certainly, attempted to clarify the record here. But I would say, she may well have been a member of these organisations, but I'm sure it wasn't ever with the intent of doing the bidding of another country or another power. I mean, these organisations, they had pretty innocuous-sounding names. I wouldn't know whether the United Front Work Department of China or some other apparatus of the Chinese state was behind them. We need to rely on our security agencies and bodies to advise us on this. And this is, one of the things we've been talking about in Australia is, the risk of foreign interference and foreign influence through seemingly innocuous organisations, be it, language institutes at universities or student groups and things like that. But, as a layperson, I don't think you can necessarily be expected to know exactly what's behind these organisations that seemingly have pretty benign aims, like promoting bilateral trade and people-to-people links. And I think that's certainly why Gladys got involved with them.
On that basis, Dave Sharma, would you expect that ASIO would be looking very, very carefully at her links with these organisations in the past?
Oh, look, I'm not going to speculate on what intelligence and security agencies, might be doing. But, this is an area that putting Gladys to one side, this is an area where our intelligence agencies are looking quite closely at just the role of foreign actors in domestic institutions.